Once upon a mundane morning, Barb's day got busy without warning. A realtor in need of an open house sign. No, 50 of them, and designed before 9.
My head hurts.
Any mighty tools to help with this plight?
Aha!
Barb made her move. She opened Canva and got in the groove.
Bulk creating Canva sheets. Create 50 signs fit for suburban streets.
Done in a click, all complete.
Sweet!
Now, imagine what your dreams can become when you put imagination to work at canva.com.
A blogging, tweeting, baseball man. Just sit back and listen, you'll become a fan. I'm a C70 junkie, a C70. I'm a C70 junkie, a C70. I'm a C70 junkie, a C70. Oh. And now your host, Daniel Shoptaw.
Hello, this is Daniel Shoptaw at C70. This is the Meet Me at Musial feed, but it is not quite Meet Me at Musial. Trying to something both new and old. When I got into podcasting back in, probably around 2011, if you don't count UCB Radio, I had a show, some of you may remember, Conversations with C70, and talked to various people, both inside Cardinals, outside, with other teams. And once what was Best Dan's turned into Meet Me at Musial came along, there really wasn't time for me to squeeze another one in. But kids are out of the house, and I've kind of gotten an idea of bringing this back a little bit. We're going to keep it here on the Musial feed. I don't know that it'll be very regular, but I'm going to try to talk to, both Cardinals related people. We'll talk about that some. But hopefully kind of spread out into other baseball. I've got some people around baseball I'd like to talk with, other bloggers, other podcasters about their teams, and I think this is a good place to put it. Obviously, Musial between January and June has a slew of guests, but we also, in that situation, are talking a lot about what's going on with the Cardinals. And so maybe some of those people show up here on the revamp of Conversations with C70 to talk more about them, more about things maybe outside of the Cardinals. We'll have to wait and see. I don't have any idea. This could be the only one of these we do. I mean, it's very possible. Good ideas and all that, but I'm going to give it a try. Hope you can let me know what you think. If you don't want it, at least they'll be labeled and you can skip them pretty easily. But for now, let's just dive into the first episode.
To give the Cardinals a lead for the first time tonight, which he does. Is it gone? Yes! A missile down the left field line by Roland. His third home run in this LCS.
Welcome in. We're talking with Josh Howsam of the Blue Jays fandom. He is a Blue Jays fan, a Blue Jays content creator, a member of the MLB Fan Council, and we're here the night before the World Series that the Blue Jays are about to tackle. Looking forward to talking about this team and what it meant to the fans and what it meant to you. But before we get to that, Josh, let's talk about you. Let's talk about how you became a Blue Jays fan.
Yeah, and it's funny. I don't remember. I mean, that's how long I've been one for my entire life. My dad and his dad were both big baseball fans. I think part of that was, just like family. Like, so some people know this, some people don't. My grandfather's first cousin was Bob Howsam, who was the GM of the Big Red Machine in the 70s. So,
oh wow, okay.
So yeah, so baseball was like in my family. So I was introduced to it before I remember ever not being introduced to something. So growing up in Toronto, I've just been a Blue Jays fan, and baseball is just kind of such a huge part of my identity in the sense of, I went to college on a baseball scholarship. I was scouted and, didn't work out, but I played up until 2 years ago. And to the point where even at my wedding, my best man was like, well, we never thought Josh would find something he loved more than baseball. Like, that's what he said in his speech at my wedding, talking about my wife. So, it's in my blood.
Yeah, I didn't realize, maybe I did. I don't know that I did though, that your history ran through that far. I mean, your grandfather there, had a little bit of a dabbling in St. Louis as well.
Well, it's my grandfather's cousin, not my actual grandfather, but yeah.
Cousin,
And he
okay.
was-
That dropped out. I'm sorry, I missed that part, but still.
yeah. And he's a big part of why the Rockies have a team, and he was the Astros, I believe. So it's kind of like, there's a lot of connections with different fandoms but the Reds are still, so when it's not the Blue Jays, it's still the Reds, because that's what he was known for. And, when my dad and I went to the Hall of Fame in 2001, maybe, I can't, it was early 2000s. We made sure to take a picture of us next to the display with the big red machine and send it to him. And, it was just really cool being able to connect that kind of way with the past of the sport.
Yeah. But like you said, you're Blue Jays. You've grown up in Toronto, and it's always been it's just been that, in the air that you breathe, basically, right?
Yeah, and I'm sure it helped too, because I'm 41, right? So that means I was born in 1984. Well, the Jays from the mid 80s until the early 90s, which is, that's when your core memories get formed. As if you are paying attention to a sport, they were awesome. The 85.
Yeah.
Well, I was one, so maybe not 85, but 89 they won the they went to the ALCS. 91 they went to the ALCS. 92 they won the World Series. 93 they won the World Series. I mean, this is my introduction to the sport, so I was just completely hooked at the Blue Jays. And then that was it forever.
Yeah, you didn't expect that, right? You kind of grew up with this and you thought this is the way it is. It's much like, some Cardinal fans after, like born in the 90s and came to in the 2000s, they just figure it's just always going to be great. And it doesn't always turn out that way.
Yeah, and I found that out the hard way.
It's also interesting though, because you being, a fan of a team, that team was less than 10 years old when you were born. So you're really, I mean, you've seen pretty much all the history of that team to some degree, or a lot of the moments that anybody's going to mention to a Blue Jays fan or a Blue Jays history, you've got, like a personal connection to a lot of times.
Yeah, and I really do feel lucky about that, because the team tries to bring people into its history a lot. The Joe Carter home run is played forever. I mean, it's just iconic, but they'll bring these legends back. And I do wonder what it's like for people who don't have that same kind of personal connection to it, because for me, it's like, these were my childhood. So I do feel very lucky about that.
Yeah. So when did you then take that passion for baseball and put it into producing various things? I know you've done writing. I know you were at Baseball Prospectus for a while. I know you've done podcasting. What made you, dive into that pool?
It kind of happened by accident. In the sense of, so this was back before, when the only social media that existed was Facebook, and, maybe Reddit. Well, actually, Reddit didn't exist then, but I don't know. I was late adopter to Reddit, so I don't know when it came in, but I was just in a Blue Jays Facebook group, and I just enjoyed talking about the sport. So when people moved over to Twitter, I just went there too. And then I ended up finding people who were already writing. And then I guess they just liked what I was saying, and they asked if I wanted to write for them. And I thought, well, I never thought about doing it, but it could be fun. I mean, I really like talking about baseball. I mean, I like to think that being able to, or at the time I was saying, well, I like to think about longer form discussion of it as opposed to just like 140 characters. So yeah, I'll give it a shot. Right. And then like they said, well, can you write a sample thing? And I wrote them like a 4,200 word breakdown of the entire 25 man roster. And they're like, oh, we can't run this.
Maybe step back just a little bit.
Yeah. But they're like, okay, yeah, we'll happily have you on board. And then, from there it just grew. And they had a podcast already at that site, but about a year in, it became, I was on it, and Greg, my co-host, for 9 years. Like, we did it for 9 years, the two of us,
Wow.
every week.
Yeah.
Well, maybe every other week during the off season, but we did, 300 episodes. It was great. It was, I loved it. I loved being able to just engage on that level. And I stopped writing, actually, because I was getting married, and I just don't have time. That's when I was with BP, and it's like, they have specific expectations about content. I was an editor there too, so it's just like, I was like, guys, like, I got to step away. I'm planning a wedding. I can't do this. And then COVID happened, and it just sort of like, it never came back. So I miss it, but I did keep the podcast going until 2024. And then just now I brought that back, because how could I not with what's going on with the Jays?
Right. Yeah, I have always, it's very interesting, because I've done writing and stuff since probably 2007. So I've seen waves of it, and it's always interesting to see the people that can make it last for, 8 or 9 or 10 years or whatever. And, but yeah, once you stop, and I've noticed that with myself, I don't write nearly as much as I used to. Once you stop, it is very, very difficult to get back on that horse.
Yeah, it is. 'Cause it's just, that there's a big routine element to writing. And when you get out of that routine, because writing is, it's a creative task, but it's also time and effort. And so you just need a flow. And when you've lost that flow, for me now, it's been 6 years since I've actually written anything. Someone asked me if I wanted to join their site about a year ago, right before this season. It's like, I should have said yes. But, I thought about it seriously, because like, I do like it. I wanted me to do a podcast with another huge Jays fan. And I was just like, this sounds fun, but it's been now so far out of my life, the writing part, that I just decided against it. But I don't know. Look, this would have been a dream season to cover, but these don't come along very often.
Right. And it would have been a lot of fun to write about it. There's no doubt. But there's also something about being able to appreciate it without feeling like you have to write about it, isn't there? To
Yeah.
not feel like I've got to take something out of this game or whatever. I can just enjoy it for what it is.
Yeah. There is a thing about that too. 'Cause I was thinking about the comparison to 2016, 'cause I was with BP then, and the Jays were in the postseason, and I was covering it. So I was in the press box, and that wild card game when Edwin Encarnacion hit the huge home run, I couldn't even celebrate, because I'm in the press box. Like, I'm a Jays fan. I'm not a writer first, and I wanted to celebrate. So I just left and went, and went down to my friends down below. And I just thought, like, comparing that to, when I was at Game 7, right? Just jumping around like an idiot in my seat on the Springer home run. It's like, oh, this is just so much better. Like, I just get to enjoy this.
Yeah. I can't imagine. I cannot imagine being in a press box at a big moment. There has to be a kind of a little bit soul sucking to some degree to not to be able to do that. So I'm glad you were able to escape and let that out. Yeah. So I'm going to talk a little bit, and maybe nobody's going to care about this, but both of us are members of the MLB Fan Council.
Mm-hmm.
And I may let you describe it, because you have been more involved with it than I have, I think, or more active with it. So do you think you can put that in a nutshell of what that really is?
Oh, I'll try. It's probably easier said than done, but basically what MLB decided to do this year, which I do love. I love the idea behind it. They decided to get a group of really dedicated baseball fans from every market, I think. And
yeah, I think so.
And then they bring us in to talk to actual decision makers. The very first meeting, we were talking to the VP of rules or whatever he's called. I mean, the guy who basically determines rules to talk about ABS, and they wanted our feedback on it. And they wanted our questions, and it's been sort of like that going through. I mean, some of them have been, in my opinion, kind of pointless, but when they really want our feedback, it just makes you feel like you're a valued member of the community. And that's how it started. But what it's actually turned into, aside from that, for people like me, is getting to talk to people like you regularly. Now, you and I had interacted prior, but I'm getting to interact with all these fans from around the league that I never would have found otherwise. And it makes some of this stuff just more fun. It's funny when the Jays beat the Mariners, I felt bad for someone that I would not have felt bad for otherwise. And I mean, that feeling lasted for like 5 seconds, but then it turned back to elation. But
right.
I don't know. This fan council thing is interesting because it brings people together and it brings us to the front of the decision-making tree, which is really interesting. If they actually listen or not, it's hard to say at this point because it's so early, but I don't know. I'm really excited about where this thing could go.
Yeah, and I think it's very interesting to see all the different facets of baseball too. I mean, we have gotten it's been a very wide and varied discussions that we have had, right? We had the authenticator, talking about how baseballs are authenticated and everything else is, and how you know it's not, how you know it's legit, and some of the scams that they've seen. And then we've talked about, player injuries, and then we've talked about social media and marketing. So to be able to, like I said, even if we're not impacting things, and I think they listen. I don't know, like I say, I don't know how much we're moving the needle, but even if that's not the case, at least we get a chance to see more of behind the curtain a little bit. And then that only makes it, and for them, it only makes it smarter because it means we can go out and say, hey, when things happen, we might have a little bit better idea of why they happened.
Yeah. And that's really good. I mean, the idea, I think that's really smart of them to do that because generally people just don't get answers to questions and it leaves them frustrated. But if you have representatives from every fan base that are active in those fan bases, it allows the message to filter out in a way that it feels more organic because it's not just like the league saying, this is what happened. It's people saying, hey, we were in discussion and we heard this. It just feels more real, I guess, to people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it is easier because if we hear something from, if Cardinal fans or Blue Jay fans are talking about something, it is a way for us to at least make sure that MLB hears it. It's easier to hear from one person than it is to hear from this, kind of chaotic mass that is social media. So I'm not saying that we're like elected representatives or anything like that, but it's almost a little bit of that, right? It's almost like, if there's something that's an issue that Cardinal fans are, worked up about, Quinn and I are there to, ask and say, hey, or, even if it's not in we've got, an email, drop an email and say, hey, what about, we're seeing this, what's your response to that? And I think if going forward, they can help us, and again, we're not mouthpieces for MLB, but, if we're able to, kind of be a conduit between the bigger fan base and MLB, I think that's an interesting thing.
Yeah. Right there with you.
So let's talk about the Blue Jays. And I figure I can probably just talk about the Blue Jays and you'll go for another 30, 45 minutes, given the way this season has gone. Which is fine. I think that would probably what everybody would rather have anyway. But going into this season, did you think it was going to be as special as it was?
No. Oh no. No. Anybody who says they did is a liar or plays for the team. That's it. Those are the two options. So, I mean, I looked at the team and I did think that there was a path to doing very well in the sense of, I mean, there were so many players on this roster that had a massive gap in between their realistic expected upside and downside, which is pretty uncommon. Usually teams have good players, bad players. The Jays had players who could be good or could be bad, and they had a lot of them. So some of them hit. Like Addison Barger came out of nowhere. Nathan Lucas, Davis Schneider was really good this year. George Springer to turn back into George Springer, which that wasn't even on my radar. But it just sort of seemed that, well, I'll go back a bit. One thing that the organization did very well is collect a whole bunch of these big Delta guys, so that if some of them hit, they have them. And if they don't, well, then they're too bad. Like they'll ship them off in a trade like they did for Varland. Alan Roden, we appreciate the effort. See you later, but still, even with that, I thought maybe this team had a path to a wild card. The idea of winning the division and finishing as the number 1 overall seed, let alone going to the World Series, no, that was beyond my wildest dreams.
So was it just a matter of a majority of guys hitting their 90th percentile or whatever the case may be, or was there something else underlying? What do you think? What really made for their success?
Well, so if you ask the players, they will all, to a man, say that there's just something about this clubhouse and just the way everybody is. There's no selfishness in the roster, and people kind of roll their eyes at that. But I did play on high level teams, and there is an element to clubhouse chemistry that does change the success of a team. So I'm not dismissing that. That's definitely part of it. But I think that they just had enough depth around their good players that it made the offense just a lot tougher to navigate. So just for an example, like, you saw it in these playoff series where at the bottom of the order, you see, he wasn't on the team the whole year, but this is representative, like Isaiah Kiner-Falefa getting hits to move the inning along, or Andres Gimenez hitting 2 home runs against the Mariners, right? These guys at the bottom that would just turn it back over to make it so that George Springer, who had the 3rd highest OPS in baseball this year, so that you can have Springer, Lucas, Bo, Vlad, Kirk, all these guys at the top to do more damage. And it just led to, they say offense is contagious, and there's a statistical element to that where it's just, you get more runners on base. If you get a hit, that means the next guy gets a bat with someone on, and they just cashed in a lot of the time in that. And they had ups and downs, as everyone does, but for the most part, since basically the middle of May, the offense just clicked, and then that's led to a lot of wins and a lot of comeback wins, which is really exciting.
Yeah, it is so much different, and I've seen the Cardinals do both over the last 10 or 15 years. It is so different when you don't have a black hole in the lineup, or 2 black holes, or whatever the case may be. I mean, you've got guys that, okay, they're not going to hit as well, but I don't know. I mean, I'm sure with your feeling with the Blue Jays now, anybody that comes up could get a hit, or could get the big hit, or could get driving a run. And not always do you feel that way, right? I mean, there are times where you got a guy that, if it rolls around to him with 2 outs, then there's just absolutely no chance that this inning's going to continue. But that doesn't seem to be the case with the Blue Jays.
It should be, right? You look at some of the names on the roster. I mean, Miles Straw got a lot of playing time this year, and his numbers are, they're Miles Straw numbers, but for some reason, he just seemed to get hits when they mattered. He'd come up with nobody on, 2 out, he'd get out, and that's okay. But he comes up with runner on second, 2 out, and here's a single to right field and scores a run. And he had a game where he hit 2 homers. I mean, it was kind of a bizarre year. But yeah, it just felt like everybody got the hits when they needed to. And there's something to be said for how a team captures the imagination of a fan base. And, the Jays in 2023, they made the postseason and people hated that team. It was just, it's funny because they won 89 games and made the postseason, and then they scored 1 run in the division series and lost. But that team it didn't hit. It was relying on winning low scoring, high stress games. And people just didn't connect with it. I mean, so my podcast co-host, Greg, that just drove him out of it. He's like, watching this wasn't fun. I don't want to do this anymore. And they made the postseason. So, but this year's team, I think the expectations being lower probably helped, but also just constantly feeling like you're going to come back and win games. And look, this team just did it. I mean, they led the league majors in come from behind victories. They're one ahead of the Dodgers, including doing one against the Dodgers where Vlad and Barger went back to back off Trinan. I mean, everybody hit Trinan, but and then the Jays coughed up the lead. Then immediately Ernie Clement hit a home run off Vesia, and nobody hit Vesia. So, it just sort of felt like there was just like Jonathan Clase, who had an OPS of 550, hit a game-tying home run against Ryan Helsley. It's just these magic moments just kept happening, and that just really just energized the fan base around this team, and that's just really cool.
Appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah, right. Sorry about that. I thought I was talking to you for a second there.
No, it's fine. No, I did. I had to go back and look because I wanted to see. I couldn't, series blend together, and so I wanted to go see. And yeah, I'd forgotten that the Cardinals and the Blue Jays had quite a series, but obviously the Blue Jays swept it. But and I think it just kind of does stick to your point that they just didn't give up. It was this idea that the offense just never would stop, no matter who was on the mound.
Yeah. And then, I mean, look, I'm a pitcher, so I've always gravitated towards pitching, and I love analyzing pitching and sequencing and movement patterns and tunneling and all that stuff. But there's nothing more fun than a team that scores runs. It's just way more entertaining to watch.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about the pitching side of things, because yes, it is fun to watch a team score runs, but there are teams that score a whole lot of runs and then give up a whole lot, and they lose a lot of games. And that's obviously not been the case in Toronto this year. Was that expected, or is this another situation where you're getting higher than expected outputs from the starters in the bullpen?
Well, it's funny because it was kind of both. Like Max Scherzer was out until mid-June, late June. Bowden Francis, who was a revelation at the end of last year, had a 6.05 ERA in 14 starts before he went down. And so that was there was a point where the Jays were rolling with 3 starters. It was Gausman, Bassett, and Barrios. And then Francis turned into a bullpen game every single time and a bullpen game. That was what they were rolling with. And that allowed people to just pop up and thrive. Eric Lauer, what he did for this team, he made 28 appearances, 15 starts, 104 innings. So he pitched a lot, 3.18 ERA. I mean, this guy was playing in Korea last year, 2 years ago. I mean, and his time as a major league guy seemed over. And then here he was just getting huge outs all season. And so similar things happened in the bullpen. Yimi Garcia, he got hurt pretty early and he only made 22 appearances for the team. And he was a guy that they were counting on heavily. And same with, I'm blanking. Nick Sandlin, another guy who was there was a big offseason acquisition with Andres Jimenez in that trade. He made 19 appearances. So that those guys going down allowed Braden Fisher to come up and throw a 2.7 ERA in 50 innings. And Brendan Little took a massive step forward before taking a step back. And Real Rodriguez, same thing. And it just allowed guys to get opportunities. And, in the bullpen, especially, you need guys to pop up or you're just not, because relievers get hurt all the time, and it just worked. But the rotation was kind of funny though, because I know I keep going here, but
no, go.
Yeah. So it was kind of guys helped and then didn't. It worked out in a way that it was beneficial for the Jays, because Barrios absolutely carried the Jays rotation for the first part of the season. Well, he and Bassett really, but and then it allowed Gausman, because Gausman started the season not great, and then he turned it around in late May when he adjusted the grip on his splitter and it started dropping again. But it was Bassett and Barrios carrying them in the early part of the season, and then later in the season when Barrios really started to struggle, well, Scherzer had come back and Lauer was in there, and then they traded for Shane Bieber, and all of a sudden Jose Barrios was in the bullpen in September, and then he got hurt, but for the first time ever he got hurt. But it was just sort of guys were good when they needed to be, and then when that stopped, there was always someone else to step up. I didn't even mention Trey Savage, so there was always somebody to just step in and help.
Yeah, he didn't even mention the guy that's going to start tomorrow night. That's
Yeah.
just shows, right? I mean, that just shows you what that team has been doing, and I think that, to have a successful team, unless you've spent a whole lot of money, and obviously the Jays are not necessarily playing poor, but they also
Sure
aren't
aren't.
in the realm of their opponent here in the series. You need those things. I mean, I know when the Cardinals have been successful, you have those guys that honestly come out of nowhere and have a great year, and then sometimes you never hear from them again, right? I mean,
Yeah, sure.
but as long as they have helped you through that 1 year, I mean, they're kind of legends anyway, right? I mean, there's people from that 2006 team that, never, really did much after that, but still kind of would get a hero's welcome if they came back to St. Louis.
Yeah, and that's the same way it was for the Jays in the early 90s and even those 2015-16 teams. It's like Kevin Pillar actually ended up having a career, but he doesn't have to buy anything in Toronto. I mean, and Chris Colabello, Justin Smoke, these guys had not a lot of time. I mean, Colabello got popped for steroids the next year and never played again, but what he did in 2015 matters to people. So, yeah, I mean, you don't, it's not about next year as you're saying there, right? It's like, just help me now and then
Yeah.
I'll deal with next year.
Absolutely. So this is that next year. Hopefully, this is the year that the Jays are in the World Series for the first time in 30 plus years. I hate to say that because the last time they were there, I just graduated from high school, so it makes me feel a little rough. But they're going up against a Dodgers team that is obviously very loaded, a Dodgers team that had basically no problems at all with the Milwaukee Brewers to get there. What do you feel like as we are here the eve of World Series 2025? How are you feeling?
Oh boy. So when we were talking off air beforehand, we sort of got into this. There's an element of being such an extreme underdog that's actually kind of a bit emotionally freeing. Look, I mean,
Mhm.
I don't want to lose. I'll be crushed if the Jays lose the World Series. Of course I will.
Right.
But when you don't expect your team to win, it just kind of makes it a little less tense. And then crushed actually isn't the right word. I'll be sad, but if I expect it, right? I mean, that's not
Mhm.
me saying the Jays can't win because that's insane. Like, of course they can win. They're in the World Series. The Dodgers didn't sweep them this year. So but they're so considered. It's crazy that they're such an underdog in the World Series. Like, you think that shouldn't be a thing.
Right.
But I think that's like the betting markets have as like a 70% favorite for the Dodgers in the World Series, which is wild. I mean, the Jays have the home field advantage. They won more games than the Dodgers. But, you look at Snell, Yamamoto, Glasnow, Ohtani all being healthy at the same time, and it's very daunting.
Yeah.
But it'd be interesting, though, because like those starters, I tweeted this out the other day, actually. Those starters in the postseason have struck out 33.5% of the batters they faced, which for starting pitching is absurd. That's really high.
Yeah.
But the Blue Jays, as an offense, have only struck out 14.8% of the time.
Mhm.
So it's really whose style can win. Because the Jays didn't strike out a lot, but every single pitcher they faced, other than Logan Gilbert, is very fastball heavy. And you can't say that about any of the Dodgers starters. So it'll be interesting because if the Jays can avoid one thing about this Jays team that made them successful during the year is pitchers who require getting strikeouts to succeed. When they didn't get them against the Jays, they struggled. So if the Jays can avoid strikeouts against this awesome starting rotation, they've got a shot. If they're striking out, as most people do against those four pitchers, it's probably not going to go very well. So, but the fact that I can say if means they've got a good chance. I mean, as good a chance as anybody's going to have.
Absolutely. And I mean, and I feel like in that situation, you hold your own till if you can get into the Dodger bullpen. Obviously, that has been a weakness for them. And, you know, being able to be a team that doesn't strike out much, that puts the ball in play, maybe makes pitchers throw a few more pitches. is a better way of doing that than, I mean, if they just get steamrolled, then that's the way it goes. But, this lineup looks like the way it can. It feels like you're going to get into some of those late innings with tight games, and that's always interesting.
Yeah, and then there's also the Jays got here without Bo Bichette, and he's almost certainly going to be in the lineup. And that can just be a game changer, especially against Snell. So one thing about this, so it's funny saying this when they just destroyed Max Fried, but one thing about this Jays lineup is that when it's a lefty on the mound without Bichette, you have Kiner Falefa and Straw in the everyday lineup, and that's just not as effective as they were. It's just not as likely to lead to success. But when you replace Kiner Falefa with Bo Bichette, well, all of a sudden you've got a lineup that can really do damage against a left-handed pitcher. So, and they did hit lefties well all season long. Bichette was healthy for most of the year, but they crushed lefties. So it's just he's such an X factor. If he's Bo Bichette as opposed to Bo Bichette coming off not playing for 6 weeks, then it just makes that offense that much tougher to play against.
Yeah, I can well imagine. And then again, score 8 and hold them to 7, and it wins. It counts, right? So you don't have to win pretty. You just have to win.
Yeah, and then of course we haven't talked about the Dodgers offense, which that's going to be enough of a challenge. So the Dodgers are kind of built like the Jays too, in that they got guys at the bottom of their order that can really hit, and turn it back over to MVP row. So you got to hold those guys at the bottom down. And that's how the Jays beat the Mariners, right? Like the bottom of that Mariners order, Crawford and Canzone and Robles and Rivas, they did nothing. So a lot of times, Julio and Raleigh are coming up with nobody on. And if you do that, you're going to beat them. And that's the same with the Dodgers. If you have Shohei Ohtani coming up with nobody on base every time, you got a lot better chance than if he's coming up with this guy standing on first and second or something like that.
Do you feel like there's any kind of psychological need for the Jays to strike first in game 1, just to kind of plant their flag and say, we're not rolling over?
Oh yeah. And I think that's part of Trey. So as you mentioned, Trey Savage, right? Starting game 1. I think that he's doing that because Gausman pitched in game 7. It would have been Gausman if he was good to go, but it could have been Scherzer. Could have been, not Bieber because he pitched game 7, but could have been Scherzer, and they went, or Gausman on short rest because he only threw like 20 pitches. But no, they decided to go with the kid, and it's like, this guy throws like nobody in the league. I mean, nobody pitches like him.
Right. And
we saw what he did to the Yankees in his first postseason start: 11 strikeouts, 5 1/3 no-hit innings, and I think it's like the idea is like, let's go try and just steal game 1 and just really just change the narrative around this whole thing. Because if they win that game, this city is just going to be buzzing. I mean, it already is, but if they beat the Dodgers in game 1, it's going to go up to a whole new level.
So I know you're picking the Blue Jays, obviously. Is this a 4, 5, 6, or 7 game series?
Well, so if I pick in my head, I probably wouldn't, but but you know what? Screw it. This is a team that's just like, they just seem to keep doing it, but it's going to be 7. They're not there. There's no way the Jays are winning this series in 6 games. I just can't see it happening. Yeah. But if it's 7 in Toronto, you're going to see Vlad magic.
Yeah.
It's going to be the Springer magic. It's going to be Vlad. That's the call I'll make. That's a prediction.
Vlad can earn that whole contract this week, can't he?
It hasn't even started
maybe
yet.
He already has.
Yeah, it already hasn't started yet, and he's already earned it. That's how crazy he's been.
All right. Well, to finish our show tonight, the talk show host Craig Ferguson always ended his interviews with giving his guests a choice of 3 items. And so I'm going to do the same. I'm going to give you a choice of 3 things. What you pick, which way you want to go with.
All right.
I can either pick a random player from Blue Jays history, and you can tell me your memories of them. We can, I call it Jedi mind trick. We can try at the same time, say a player, that played for both the Cardinals and the Blue Jays, and see if we get it right. If we say the same person, or we can end on a pun.
Oh, the pun
Which I do
sounds like
not
a lot of
promise to be any
fun, but I'm such a Blue Jays history guy that I got to go with the first one. It's just so up my alley. So
All right. Well, and this is not. I mean, being that you're a history guy, I'm not picking obscure guys at all, and I
well,
want to
that wouldn't be
talk because
great
the
for
guy.
anybody.
No, I mean you. One you would probably know, and it would be fine. But just on the off chance, it's like I don't even know that guy.
My memory is like, I
But it's
think
a
he got a
guy that
single.
it's a guy that always stood out to me because 'cause I'm a few years older than you, so I'm watching those early, mid '80s, early '90s teams. Dave Steeb.
So
So what? Go ahead.
yeah, so I'm sad that I was too young to see his absolute peak, which was, like 82 to 84, when he should have won the Cy Young 3 times and didn't win it once because he was prickly and I don't know, whatever the reason. Writers didn't like him. Maybe even 4 times. But Dave Steeb is the reason that the Blue Jays were allowed to. He was kind of the guy that let them grow. And, I was always like, my guy was Jimmy Key, but I don't know. I just always gravitated to pitchers like him, like, soft tossing guys like, Marco Estrada, Mark Burley too, even though I was not that as a pitcher, but Dave Steeb was, as a young fan watching baseball, I couldn't imagine someone being better than Dave Steeb. It was just sort of like, his slider was, I didn't know how a human could make a ball move like that as a kid. Like when you don't even understand physics, I remember watching his no-hitter in 1990. I didn't fully grasp the concept of this guy had so many failed no-hitters before this.
Yeah.
At one point he lost 2 no-hitters with 2 outs in the 9th in back-to-back games. Like, I mean, so I knew that had happened, but I was 6 years old. So it's like, I didn't fully internalize it, but just seeing it and seeing, like, of course, I was like, of course this guy threw a no-hitter. Like, this is the best pitcher in the world. I mean, he wasn't. Roger Clemens existed, but I just, like, he's the reason that the Jays were good enough to go and get Alomar, Carter, White, Winfield, Morris. Like, without the existence of Dave Steeb and making the team relevant, because they had good players, but he was a great one. And an ace at the front of your staff allows you to be great. That made the team popular, that made the team good, and that made the team rich enough to go and get those stars. So even though he was not a part really of that World Series team, he was bad and injured in 1992. When I saw him run onto the field when they won, I was like, yeah, he has to be there. Even as an 8-year-old, like, I was like, of course Dave Steeb is here. Like, he's just so, you can't be a Blue Jays fan of my age or older and not feel that he is an iconic Blue Jay.
Is he throwing out a first pitch this week?
I doubt it, just because Steeb doesn't come back for a lot of things. And I really think that if you watched what they've done, division series guys threw out stuff in the division series, and then the ALCS was all LCS team heroes. I think this is going to be World Series heroes. So Steeb, because he was hurt and didn't pitch in that World Series, I think you're going to see Joe Carter for sure. I mean, he's probably game 1. It's either him or Cito Gaston. One of those 2 guys is throwing on game 1. And then if it goes longer, I bet you're going to see Pat Borders, World Series MVP in 92, Paul Mulder maybe, or Devon White. Like that's the guys that it's going to be. I wanted Steeb actually to throw out the first pitch for game 7 of the LCS. I was begging for them to do that because he's the only pitcher who ever pitched in a game 7 for the Jays prior in 1985. And because no one had done that, it's like, this is the time to honor an icon. My guess is he just didn't want to, because that's just kind of how he is. But I would love it. I mean, I would be cheering so loud if Dave Steeb walked out on the field.
It's always interesting to see how legends for each team are one treated, but also how what their relationship is with the team after they've retired. Because you're right, some of them just they they go off and they don't really want to mess with it anymore. While some of them really do enjoy to keep that connection. So it's interesting that he has chosen the former. But all right,
But
well, Josh,
just
it
before
has
I
been.
can't let you out this.
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. I cut out your outro. I cut you
No,
off in your
go.
outro. I'm so sorry as a podcaster doing that. But
Not at all. Not at all.
nobody would make me pop more if randomly the guy who never comes back, Jimmy Key, showed up for a World Series game. World Series hero Jimmy Key. If he showed up, I would just lose my mind and I would never recover.
Well, here's hoping then maybe he can throw out the Game 7 first pitch just to make a complete experience for you. But Josh, I do appreciate you joining me tonight. It's been a lot of fun, and I look forward to kind of following along with you as the series goes along. And here's hoping it turns out pretty well for you.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for having me. This is a lot of fun.
Chris Carpenter has never pitched a one-hitter in his career, but it looks like he'll do it right here. A gem for the former Jay, a big smile, and a shutout victory against the team that essentially gave up on him in 2002.